What's going on, guys? Welcome back to 4K Motoring. I'm Chris, and today we're going to do an oil change on the C5 Corvette. And this seems to be kind of a common issue I've seen on a couple different forums with the C5 Corvette. The oil pan, specifically the drain bolt, over time, as these cars are now 20 years old, have been ugga-dugga too many times into the block and actually caused the threads to strip out. So I noticed right when we bought this car that I was unable to by hand take that drain plug out of the engine block. Had to use impact to take it out and realized either the threads are all stripped out in it or there's potentially a helicoil that's in there that is cross-threaded. I didn't quite know what was happening, but I didn't have the time or inclination at the time to fix it. So went ahead and just swapped the oil, swapped the filter, put the new drain plug in it, drove it for a couple months, and now we're ready for our next oil change. Now that I'm aware of this problem ahead of time and we've got a little bit of time for it to sit in the garage, we're gonna go ahead and pull the bottom half of this Batwing oil pan off that the 2001 Corvette had, just so we can really see what the condition of those threads are in the actual drain plug itself, to see if that's a helicoil, to see if it's just strip threads or whatever is in there, to see how we can best go about fixing it and have a reasonable and functional drain plug again. Well, first thing we got to do is get this thing lifted up so we can get underneath it and see where we go from there. Well, through the magic of film, I now have the Corvette jacked up in the garage. We have the front wheels off, we have the back end up on ramps. Tried to keep it where the back end is just a little bit higher than the front end. As anybody that's changed the oil in these cars knows, the drain plug is actually in the front of the oil pan rather than the rear. So by jacking up the front, you don't really empty out all the oil in that oil pan. And since we're planning on taking that bottom half off, I want to try and drain everything out that we can. So I've gone ahead and left the back end jacked up a little bit higher. We're going to go ahead and just pull that drain plug out. It's going to require impact, and just let the oil drain for a while and try and let all that oil drain out before we go ahead and pull the bottom of that pan off. Just to show you guys what I mean here, looking under the car, you can see that's our drain plug, and you can see it's dripping, and we can see that Batwing oil pan, how it's got all the bolts on it. We're going to work on getting all of those off so we can pull that whole bottom pan out so we can see what the actual condition of those threads are for that drain plug. So we've gone ahead and removed the lower part of our Batwing oil pan, two-piece oil pan from the car. Obviously we drained all the oil ahead of time. Remember that drain bolt in the front of the car, 15mm drain bolt, and the oil filter, removed that as well. Let those kind of drip dry for a while. We went ahead and took out all the perimeter bolts for the Batwing oil pan. Now, there are a couple different versions of this oil pan. The one that came on this 2001 Corvette from the factory is a two-piece oil pan, which allows us to do this and makes it a little bit easier. When you have to replace the entire oil pan, that is a whole lot more work. So I'm glad we're able to do this. And this gasket, luckily, came apart very easily, was easy to be cleaned, seems to be in good condition, so we're able to reuse that because sourcing one seems to be quite a problem as well. So I'll show you what the drain plug that came out of the car looked like. Obviously you can see how that looks kind of mangled and wrong. Here is a new drain plug for comparison. So clearly had been pretty mangled. Inside that drain hole was a helicoil. If you guys are familiar with these things, this obviously is not what they're supposed to look like. Somehow, whether it's the wrong thread pitch, whether it was over tightening, something happened that caused this drain plug to get stripped out inside that helicoil. Obviously something happened to have the helicoil exist in the car in the first place. But I guess they tried to then put the same drain plug back in or something, and it was just all a mess. It leaked, and now there's little chunks of metal everywhere. You can see the little threads there on our rubber gasket. You can see bits of metal. There's aluminum foil that was in the motor. Hopefully that's aluminum foil. I'm not sure why that was in the oil pan. So we're gonna go ahead and clean some of this up. And I think probably what happened is they tried to fix an over tightening issue of the drain plug, which happens in these older cars, especially aluminum engine pans, while it was in the car. And it's kind of a pain to get under there. It's a pain to get at the right angle. So I think that's probably where the flaw was. Us having this removed allows us to do a whole lot more with it. So I think we're gonna have a lot better success. Along with the repairs that we're gonna do, hopefully this is gonna be a one-time thing, because we went ahead and got one of the Fumoto oil drain valves. If you guys are familiar with these things at all, basically allows you to thread into the OEM thread pitch, and then there's just a little lever on it that allows you to remove a clip and just drain the oil out without having to use any tools. This should be pretty cool. These things got pretty highly rated, so I'm hoping that they do well. You can get little pieces of rubber hoses that'll go onto this tip. That way it can go right into your oil pan or whatever you need to drain it into. Makes it pretty easy. Hopefully that means we're gonna have no more leaks in this car, and sweat from all that horsepower will stay contained. We're gonna go ahead and do the helicoil repair to this oil pan. Because it's already been done once, this is gonna be a pretty easy process. So the drain plug, we will turn this over so we have access to it here. So this is an M12 thread pitch from our factory bolt. Factory bolt M12, all right? And you can see obviously it's a big hole because it was drilled out already because somebody already did a helicoil. The helicoils are supposed to, these are the M12s, this is what they're supposed to look like, as opposed to the one that came out of the car. So hopefully we're going to be able to more successfully not have to drill it out because it's already been drilled out. We're going to rechase the threads with the die here, and then we're going to install the new helicoil, hopefully more successfully, and that should make this an easy process. And then we'll get all these bolts cleaned up and back in, refill the oil, and hopefully that's that. Because I think it was already threaded in there. So now that it's cleaned up, it should be good to go. Now, if this is in the car while you're doing it, a little bit of grease will help all the metal shavings stick to it so you don't have to worry about it. Because we have this out, I'm not too worried about that. We're gonna go ahead and just dumping it out, you can see the metal shavings. We'll do a little compressed air to blow through there, and I think that'll be all we need. Then we'll throw some Loctite in and throw that new helicoil in, and hopefully those threads will hold. So typically you want a red thread locker for this. I don't have any, I have blue. Anything will be better than nothing. Again, this is not going to be something we take in and out frequently at all. So I think we'll be good with that. We're going to take our little kit here, and we can see this grabs on to the tail here. So you're going to screw this in until it's about half a turn below the surface is what they say. So we are right exactly aligned right there. So we're going to go about a half a turn in. That's a quarter. There we go. And that is right about a half. Okay, that is 1/2 turn in. So our helicoil is sitting in there now, and it is threaded. So the final step is we have to break that little tang off from inside. They've given us a little punch to do that. So we'll grab a hammer, tap that out, and that should be all we need. So that was pretty easy. Overall, we have the new helicoil installed. Take a look in there. You can see from the length of it how it kind of sticks inside the pan, which I don't imagine is going to be a big problem. Again, this is not something we're going to be removing a whole lot, so we're just going to install that new oil valve, and hopefully that'll be enough. So we've got our new drain valve spun in there. We've got it moved to the side so it doesn't stick down below the oil pan, so this should be probably about the best we're going to get for this job. We did go ahead and pretty well clean up the bottom piece of the batwing oil pan. We've cleaned the mating surface on the car itself. Hopefully this will be a pretty easy job of getting it back together. Like I said, that gasket's still in good shape. We'll screw it up. These bolts don't require a whole lot of force. Just make sure they're kind of even all the way around the car. So I'll post the torque spec for these little, like I said, 10mm bolts that go around the perimeter here. And hopefully it will be an easy job. Well, just a minor fitment issue with this new Fumoto drain valve. You'll see on the tip of it, I had to cut off part of it because it stuck out just a little bit too far. There's a cross member that runs right in front of where this oil pan is under the car that really doesn't allow a whole lot of room. It makes it difficult just to get the drain plug out and doesn't allow a lot of forward movement for this. So I think cutting just the tip of that off will still allow us to clear just fine and should be able to move forward. All right, here's our drain valve, and you can see all the bolts all the way around are tight. Now the torque spec per the manual for these bolts is 12 Newton meters or 106 inch-pounds. Tighten in an alternating fashion across the pan. You can see the cross member right on top that was causing us some issues with the length of the drain plug. Once it's all tight, it probably was not that big a deal. But that's where everything goes. We're gonna put the oil filter back on, fill it back up with oil, hopefully no leaks, and we'll be moving forward. Well, we can cross that off our list of completed projects. We have the car put back together, the drain valve is in, still looks to be weeping ever so slightly. The damage that was done to the actual threads and that drain hole in the oil pan had a couple of deep gouges and a little bit of damage that I guess that thread tapper didn't quite take away. So we'll see as it sets after that fiber O-ring kind of seals in and gets a little moist to see if it kind of softens itself up and really seats better. Overall, it is better than it was, so I think that counts as a win. Now, as far as the rest of the car getting put back together, 5W30 oil is what's usually recommended for this. There is a temperature range for these cars that you can go a little bit both directions with it. It takes right at 6 quarts with the oil filter being replaced. So keep that in mind. I use Royal Purple. Really, as long as you're using synthetic and you change it often, everybody has the oil debates. It doesn't matter. Use synthetic oil, change it often, and it's fine. Everything's put back together. Wheels go on, 90 to 100 foot-pounds for the lug nuts on the wheels. We're sitting at idle 31 to 34 PSI oil pressure. We're right at the bottom to middle of the oil fill gauge on the dipstick. So all in all, I think we have a running drivable car yet again. As always, thanks for watching 4K Motoring. If you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe. Really helps us out. We're gonna have more Corvette content on the horizon. Stay tuned and we'll be back.